It has the touch of a very magical evening. Pleasure to have you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My dear friend, Hugo. It's been a long time and it's wonderful to see him here. My goodness. I thought it might be a good idea for us to begin this evening with going into ourselves and finding the source of our own beauty, say, or our own power, our own strength. There are many things that can be said about what I've been calling the sensing exercise. It's actually fairly simple. With our mind, we go to different parts of our body. And with our mind, we investigate these parts. With our mind, we bless these parts. We bring them health. We bring them caring. All the parts are included in a balancing. And we wonder, when we are sensing the hand and we're feeling the hand, we could say we're feeling the exterior of the hand and the interior. Are we also being able to be in touch with the atmosphere that's around the hand? Are we able to be in touch with the second body? And as we sense our body, we ask, how far does this body extend? Yes, this is the corporal part. How far does the psychic body extend? A foot? 2 feet? 20 feet? 200 feet? How far are we an entity that's living in space? And I'm sure that there are more things that hasn't occurred to me yet to think. But every once in a while, another idea adds to it. And tonight, perhaps we'll focus on the idea that as we travel through this body and we pay attention to this body, we remind ourselves that we are very, very unique, because never before has this person existed, and never again will this person exist. It is an occurrence in time, an occurrence in the universe. And whether you have moments that you're very, very pleased with yourself and moments that you're not so pleased with yourself, this entity is unique, special, has never occurred before, and will never occur again. So each of these moments with ourselves is another expression of the eternal love. It's like a romance that we have with this entity. We close our eyes perhaps and find a comfortable place to sit, in balance, holding ourselves upright. Even from that there's a good feeling. And now we send our attention to the right foot. Press the right foot lightly against the floor, making a connection with earth, grounding. The floor upholds us. Send our mind to that foot. Send caring. Send respect. Send healing. That foot is a part of the body, and we begin there where it rises from the ground. At the same time, listen to all the sounds. The sound of the fan, the sound of traffic, the sound of Gil's voice, the sounds that we make in our own body, reminding ourselves that these are real sounds. Very often the monologues we have with ourselves, they are not real, they are imaginary, but those are real sounds. Do nothing with breathing except to let it happen as the body desires it. And now do the same thing with the right knee. That area that brings the current from the foot to the knee. Sensing and listening. And continuing that energy to the right hip. And we ask ourselves, are we comfortable with the way we feel when we are sitting? How does contact with the chair feel? A center of many, many nerve endings. Very powerful place. These are the hips. They are halfway in our body. Listening, breathing and existing, caring for this body, sending love to it, and remembering that we have the capacity to be aware of this body and having this body be in contact with our own spirit as much as we wish to. As much as we wish to. And the right hand. If we place our hand near our knee, we see that we touch the material of our clothing. We feel the different materials. We feel the currents of air. We have the capacity to move any finger when we wish to. And we also have the capacity to send the ability to move to a finger and almost move it, but not quite move it. Sensing and listening. sensing a real body and listening to real sounds. The same thing at the right elbow. The right shoulder. Traveling across the upper back to the back of the neck. To the first bone of the spine that holds our head and only has the ability to say yes. It takes another juncture to say no. But the first and uppermost is the capacity to say yes. Yes, I am. Yes, I care. Yes, I believe. And visit the face, letting the face be free. Letting the face be free of expressing whatever it is that we think we should be expressing. Just letting it be free. Letting the jaw just hang naturally, softly. The face as we know it, not as a statement to others. And back across the shoulders to the left shoulder. Sensing and listening. And all through the body, allowing it to be soft, soft, fluid. And even when we believe that it's as soft as we can make it, then still make it softer. Let there be nothing tense, all soft. Left elbow. Left hand. Visit each finger. If you wish to move the finger so slightly that no one could see it, no matter how close they were, but you know that you've moved your finger. And the left hip. And feel within yourself a little dance that no one has to see. But inside, it's moving. Inside, the pieces are changing balance. And the left knee. and the left foot. So the circle has completed from the ground that holds us, from the earth where everything begins, to the apex, and down the other side of our body. Now, sitting, make a line in your imagination between the right foot and the left shoulder, between the right hand and the right knee. Between the left foot and the back of the neck. These lines crossing ask yourself, which foot is further away from your body, the right or the left? Where is your nose? Is it exactly in the middle of your body? Or is it turned? And allow this beautiful body to live and breathe. And with your mind sometimes, or with your hands if you wish to, create a design in movement. The entire exercise is called sensing, looking, and listening. We've been sensing, we've been looking. We have not been looking. Sensing and listening, and now we will begin to look. Generally, during our days, we see an object, we see a watch, we see a glass, we see a pen, and we're actually taking a photograph of it. We run the photographs together, and it looks like we're seeing everything. What we're going to practice now is simply opening the eyes, looking at everything but nothing in particular. Opening the eyes, seeing all, and letting the light come in without focusing on anything, like seeing into eternity. Open your eyes and let's do that. We practice seeing everything without making a choice. Here and again, pardon me. Here and again we look at another person. And this other person is traveling with us on a very interesting journey. They are with us. They are alive. They are human. and they are our companions. They feel, they laugh, they cry, and they are part of the people that work on themselves to find clarity, to find reality, and to find the direction that is best suited for their individual heart. With the way of looking that we can see the ceiling, the floor, as far as possible with either of our eyes, we are encompassing everything we see, and we have changed the structure of the eye. We are able to see more and differently than we saw before. As we look at people, we see their faces change. Take a few moments to let yourself be soft. And return to where you are comfortable. I wish to take some time and devote a few of our thoughts to a man called Bernardo. Bernardo was part of the association we had for a number of years. Back in the 80s, 82 or 83, definitely 84. And last year, I came across an old videotape, and in the course of repairing it and making it playable, I saw Bernardo there. And I asked, does anybody know where Bernardo is these days? What has become of him? Many years have passed. Over 20 years. And I remembered that somewhere I have a notation in my files saying that James introduced Bernardo to me on a certain day. So perhaps, James, if you remember, do you remember where you found him?
That was the time that we were putting ads in The Voice and other papers.
Mm-hmm.
And he responded to one of those.
Did you go to his home to meet him, or did he come down
We
to
met
meet
at a
you?
cafe somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly where.
What was your first impression?
I don't really remember now, but I mean, I generally sort of had the impression that he was, you know, serious about the work, serious about, you know, doing something with himself.
And then you introduced him to me. He was a rather large guy. There was something likable about him, very likable. So at that time we used to meet 3 or 4 times a month on Thursdays. And he stayed for a bit. He stayed for about how long was he here? Maybe 2 years?
At least.
Yeah.
At least 2 years.
We also used to meet more often than that. We met on Thursdays as well as Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Yeah. A lot of meetings.
As well as on weekends.
Yeah. And weekends for work sessions and carpentry and things like that. So Bernardo was here at a time when a man called Joe was here. And Joe was the first member to pass away. Joe was young, he was ill. Passed away in 1995. We were all there when he passed. How do you remember Bernardo? What do you...
The part of him that worked was very committed to working. And he was always being pulled away by his family.
Yeah.
And that was a deep struggle. But at core, he was in the work. And the rest was an overlay. Even though it pulled him away, since it was at core, he came back. He found his way back. And I think that we had a number of conversations encouraging him to continue. So I would say, for myself, is to just speak more when it seems like the right thing to do. With Joe Caputo, another member of Joe who had passed away, Joe allowed, I believe a person always allows you to tell them the truth. You can't really push your way where there's no door, but just a wall. And in Joe's case, I remembered exactly telling him if he didn't do something, he was going to die soon. And James and I sort of spent a lot of time with him. And I remember saying that to him with force, and he took that energy and he changed, and he lived for many years after that. So I think the message is to be alert and ask oneself, am I meant to speak from essence, in which case I'm responsible.
So it seems that all these years later, I remember asking James, where is Bernardo? Where is he? How can he be found? What's his telephone number somewhere? And I didn't realize at the time that I was being rather insistent with this. I wanted to find Bernardo. I really wanted to find him. And then somehow we got his number, we found him, and we started talking. And we came to a decision that the best person to work individually with Bernardo at this time was Chon. So Chon and Bernardo started speaking Very good. Would you tell us a little about that?
I began to speak with Bernardo July 2011, and we met every week and we spoke. And I got to know him, his inner lives and his outer lives, as well as his essence and his history, who he was. And it's been a pleasure for me to get to know Bernardo. And to me, in his essence, he was a joyous child. And there was a joy in him. And I'll always remember Bernardo, that substance of a child that he embodied. And I found out in order for him to come to our meeting, he had to go to the doctor, take the Percocet, get a cortisone shots, and so forth and so on to climb up those stairs. And personally, I think that the machine went too far. I feel hopeless and helpless in terms of his physical body. But we continue to speak on his reading materials and his spiritual life. And I think it's been a real opportunity for me to learn about a person. And he was younger than I, and I felt that as if he was my younger brother. And I think we identify with our life so much that we forget our spirit and our soul and our essence. And I think that's what happened to Bernardo. And you, Gil, as a main teacher who are gathering all the flocks, and you had a premonition to track down Bernardo. And I think it's been a good journey for him. And he was helped by your inspiration and your teachings. And I feel friendship towards Bernardo. And good memories.
In explaining this particular point that she brought up, the idea of Chon working with him, and in a moment we'll get to Derek. Derek worked with him as well. It came to me that I am not a guiding light, I am not a special person, that many people in this community know an awful lot and are able to be of great benefit to people, and that there should be, because the impression I wanted to establish was that if someone comes to community to work, it is not just to work with me. Albert's been working a while. People have been working a while here, and I said, why not a person comes in and they're more or less led by Albert, or led by James, or led by Pamela, or when a person comes into this society, I felt that they can say to themselves, it isn't just Mr. Gill that is doing what he does. There are also 10 or 12 people here who have placed themselves at the service of being of help to a new person. So I often say to people, I am not the only person you can call. I am far from being the only person you can speak to. If something comes to mind, speak to any one of the people that are here. Call James, call David, Pamela, what have you, Joan. It isn't just me as the center. I don't want that. So Bernardo, like other people, has been placed with the connection to speak to Chon and to speak to Derek. What did you think, Derek?
I spoke to him twice a week for about the same period as Chon did.
You spoke to him twice a week?
Oh, I'm sorry, twice a month.
Twice a month?
Twice a month for about a year. And we spoke by phone. And my initial impressions were similar. I thought he was incredibly intelligent. He was incredibly interested in many things. He played music. He liked to do watercolors. He was a pretty avid reader of work material and many others. And I thought he was a serious worker at the times when we spoke on the phone. I knew, there was this weight problem, and it was something that I would try to come back to and encourage him to, exercise, and trying to really keep it simple and always bringing our conversations back to his weight. I thought that's a good challenge.
Bernardo weighed 450 pounds.
So I didn't know just how great the situation was in. I knew this was important, or probably the most important thing is to work on his physical body. And I tried to encourage him that way. And I too came away with the feeling that I was speaking to a friend. And that became more apparent when I found out he passed. I don't think I really realized how much of a friend I considered him until he was gone, and how much I'll miss those conversations. And incidentally, our conversations, I would, as I did them during my working hours, I would walk to the High Line, it's a park, and I would walk, in this garden and talk to him. So now I think I'll always remember him whenever I go to this really beautiful garden. And we had really great conversations, two ways, speaking about work quotes that he had brought. I could speak about these meetings, which he was incredibly grateful to be a part of. I think there wasn't a time we spoke we didn't say how thankful he was that he was allowed to come here, and how impressed he was with everybody's words. And I think that really made his life when I knew him. And I guess other than that, I can go on for a while, but I'll say I think he really loved his family. He loved his daughters, he loved his granddaughter. He's always bragging about his granddaughter in particular to me, about how smart and really she's a great tennis player, and he was trying to help her and encourage her, and I was always encouraging him to really take an active part in his family's life. I can tell that really sparked him, and made him want to go on. So I'll miss him too. I didn't know him that long, but I feel that I will really remember him.
What's your impression of the idea that the man came to realign himself with this community, and that you were, in conjunction with Chon, that you were placed in a leading position with his work?
It's possible. I do think that it seems more than coincidental that he had returned, and how he had returned. Your intuition to bring it back, and it seems definitely more than coincidental that he came back this time. So.
What do you think of the idea of you being placed as one of the leading players with a new person?
I mean, in hindsight, I'm honored, and it was really incredibly beneficial experience for me. I felt when I was asked to speak to him that it was kind of a way for me to increase my work, and give me more responsibility, so to speak. And I believe that
Now, if you spoke to Bernardo, could you also be in charge of other people as well?
Yes.
2, 3, 4, 5, 10?
I think so, yes.
In that lies something that I've been focusing on my direction. Has not happened. But why should it be that I would be the only one who takes the lead? What would happen to the work in general if all the people here each was nurtured, encouraged, and assisted in building their own group of people with the general focus of the center of it being here? That would mean instead of my working with 15 people, 15 people could work with 15 people. And instead of it being 15 or 16 of us, there could be 10 times 15. It's a big difference. That's the way that I have pictured and what I have felt that the direction of things should go. It has not happened that way. We're spending this time, which is precious time because these are 15 people that only meet 15, 12 times a year. The first thing that presents to my mind, is there an energy in the work itself that reaches towards a man and pulls him without his knowing it that much, that pulls him towards this work and the people in it, that made it a sort of a magnet for this man to return? The last time I spoke with him, he had already was trying to make attempts. He already had more or less 2 or 3 people in his neighborhood that were meeting with him or talking with him. He was getting his own reading group together of people that he met. Does work have the power to bring a person to something where the work wants to return them? I believe yes. These things are open to belief, speculation. There are no facts on this. What makes me, after 20 years at least, it was 1984, and I started speaking to Bernardo in 2010, that makes me take an active part and do all I can that this man may find us again. It gives us a chance to see the power of the spirit of gravity. The last time I spoke with him, I mentioned again his weight, his medical condition. I said, Bernardo, things are not looking well with you weighing over 400 pounds. I said, can you change what you eat? And he said, no, because I am Hispanic, and Hispanic people, which I am one of, he said, and my family, Hispanic people have a duty, an obligation, a call to eat particular foods. Chorizos and the rest of it. It's not the best food for somebody who is diabetic and a couple of 100 pounds overweight. So somehow he gave himself the permission to continue with his food because it's a national calling that he must do. Very good excuse. I said, Bernardo, you picked a great excuse. And he had another one. The fact that as a Christian person, God wants him to thrive, to live, to eat, to partake of the benefits of the world. Well, you guessed it. When God says you have to eat all you can, and you have to eat all you can of a particular food because you owe it to your nationality, the boat has sunk. And 4 weeks later, Bernardo came to an end. This is not an ignorant guy from the East Bronx who... Bernardo was, I think he went to Columbia. He had jobs, good jobs, during his career. How does this idea grab hold of a man who reads, who writes, who plays music, who has a family? So I use that example that the spirit of gravity wishes to destroy everyone who works, and more so those who work very well or very dedicatedly. And it took this man, and because this man would not leave the ideas of the work, would not leave the work as presented by Mr. Gill or Derek or Chon, it took his life. And again, I say, when the work cannot take away your mind, your ideas, it will strive to take away your life, your physical life. So we find things like Dr. Maurice Nicole, leading proponent of the work, leading psychotherapist in England, the main student of Dr. Carl Jung. At the age of 53, he accidentally slips in the bathtub, smashes his head against the tub, and dies. That finished that. He had already written and presented great ideas on the work. Done and gone. Rodney Collin, who was Ouspensky's leading and first student, who had already accepted that he would take the work to Central and South America. What town was it that Rodney died in?
It was near Cusco in Peru.
In Cusco, yes. In Cusco, Rodney Collin has an accident and falls from the roof of the church into the town square, killing him, of course. This is not odd or rare, but I believe that the spirit of gravity, the opposition to the power of work, will do all it can to actually to hurt you and get you out of work. That's very important. We find that she spoke of Joseph Caputo. Joseph Caputo is a very, very dear name. You did meet him, and you never met him. Joseph had many personal problems, which we discussed again and again and again, and he sort of cleared that up. Joseph wanted desperately to be a photographer. And I have a few of his pictures at home, very, very high quality stuff. The shows that he was involved in Manhattan were quality shows. His work was quality work. He was an artistic photographer. Again and again, Joe said to me, I can't do it, I can't do it, I don't want to do it, my work. The things an artist goes through, of course. Says, I don't want to take pictures. I forget. I don't want. I gave him an aim. I said, Joseph, do me a favor and yourself if you can. Every single day when you get up and when you get up, put your camera on you and go about your day. And when you get to work, it may not look too terrific for your job to walk in with a camera. Take the camera off, but keep the strap on under your suit or something. So Joseph, being a great guy, he said, I'll do it, I'll try. So for at least 2 years, he lived with his camera on, the strap on, the camera. He lived with it. Joseph was part of the stone wall in Greenwich Village where the gay people fought the police in New York. Joseph was at every gay movement, parade, meeting, spectacle. He was the center of the gay movement. He was the photographer for the gay movement. And to this day, Joseph's work is to be found in the museum, the New York Museum. His work is there. If you look up in the computer, Joseph Caputo, the New York Public Library is the archive of his work. He died of AIDS. And he died with Pam, James, and I, a hospital on 12th Street, St. Vincent's, and we held his hand in the moments that he was dying. There's a weeping willow tree that I planted a few years ago on my lawn. That's Joseph's tree. I say hello to that tree daily. That man and his memory and my will not pass away while I'm alive. Thomas Chapin was a great musician. Great. He played many times here. Where the jazz circle of New York said, this man is an up-and-coming gene. This man is, wow, incredible. He died of blood cancer. Both these men died at the age of 40. Thomas also died with us. These are pieces of understanding that are subtle. The subtlety is when I, Mr. Gill, say to somebody, you work with me, either you will be at my funeral or I will be at yours. And there is no disputing that or changing that. That is a promise I make to myself and to the work. There's a tree there for Thomas. Already the landscape guy is going to bring another tree for Bernardo. As we look through the lines, like, what's going on here? This is deeper than a group of people meeting for self-improvement or to get better or do something better. Pam, what's the name of that guy we spoke to? That was that asked us how long the group had been going. He knows a lot of people, a lot of groups. He's a very famous guy. He's the head of some movement in New York. Anyway. We met him at a particular party, very famous guy, and one word led to another. Said, well, it's a fourth way group here. He said, how long have you been together? At the time I said, 12 years, 15 years. He said, 12 or 15 years. The average age for a group to last in New York is maybe 3, 4, tops 5 years. It doesn't go longer than that. At present, as of tonight, this community, James, myself, Pamela, we've been meeting without stopping the work for over 30 years. I promise everyone, I promise the gods in the skies, I will die doing this. There are no vacations, no goings, no suspendings. I will be here till I die. That's what this work is. Joan will be here till she dies. James will be here. Pamela. So this kind of understanding of what the work presents. It is not a religion. It sure is a lot like one. The idea that I present often, again and again and again. There are 15 people here. If we had 1,500 people here and we asked the entire audience, if you believe in God, and many will say they believe in God, describe in a small piece of paper your idea of God. Then put them in a big pile. I dare say you will find 1,500 different definitions of what God is, because every human being that I've ever spoken to has an idea, an opinion of what God is to them. I've used the phrase a generic God because everyone has a different opinion. I have an opinion of God. She does. Everyone has a different one, and you do. Allowing that to be, where there's no central building that you go to for a meeting on Sundays at 10 or something, allowing that, can one be dedicated to the idea of God as one believes it to be? I am dedicated to my idea of God. And as many people in the world as wish to can be dedicated to the idea of their God, or a higher spirit, or Zeus, or whatever they choose to call it. This work, as presented by myself, is to help a person be clear of their traps, of their bindings, that they may in turn live freely, knowing that the only thing that is for real is the relationship between a person and their spirit. That is not here today and gone tomorrow. That is our only idea of forever. I believe that when we say we wish to be free, I define that as wishing to be free of the negativity within this mind that talks and talks and talks all day. To be free of that is to find love, and people here are finding what they need to find. Say something, David, because you're a guy who's thought a lot.
Thank you. The story of Bernardo strikes this person as a reminder of our addictions, and it's not the obvious addiction that he was addicted to food. It's what struck this man was he was addicted to a story that he told himself. This story that his his culture and his religion somehow compelled him to act a certain way. And I dare say that every single person in this room, if we are honest with ourselves, is addicted to at least one story, and probably several. And this man certainly is, and Mr. Gill and I have spoken about that. And the second thing is we had for this man, a terrific discussion while you and Sue were away, and unfortunately we had terrible video and audio that night when we talked about death, the group of us that was here. And perhaps others remember, maybe James, you remember, this man seems to recall that Bernardo's reaction when we talked about death was that he thought it would be peaceful. That when he thought about it, there was a sense of peace. And I welcome anyone if they have a different recollection, but that was this man's recollection. And at that evening, David presented a book called Chasing Daylight. And the exhortation of the author of that book, who himself died about death, was to, amongst many, move it up. Whatever your thoughts about death, that it's going to happen at some point, etc., and you'll deal with it or whatever, move it up. If you were 50 years old and you say you'll start thinking about it at 60, move it up. If you're 40 and say I'll think about it at 50, move it up. And so on and so on. So those are some of the thoughts that come to this man this evening.
Michael had an experience with this that I would like to hear again.
The Bernardo.
With Bernardo and you saw.
I wasn't terribly close to Bernardo. I knew him from this meeting. I'd met him maybe 5 or 6 times. Had small talk, but didn't really ever go much deeper than that. Derek had sent the note, I believe it was Friday or Saturday, that Bernardo had passed away. A day or so later, I woke up with Bernardo in my room. He was there. I was asleep, and then I was seeing him. And he asked for help. And he asked that I communicate to some of the members of the group that he is in between worlds and that he feels lost and scared. And so I did. I reached out to Pam, Bill. We talked about it. And it felt true. It felt genuine. It felt that there was some unfinished business Bernardo had in this plane. What he said to me was he felt guilty and he felt sad that he did what he did to himself and couldn't say goodbye to his family that he loved. And so Caroline and I spent a night praying and reading from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo prayers. I know Pam did the same that night. I know Alex Hayden did the same that night. And I think that helped.
I think Bernardo died the 23rd on a Saturday.
23rd, 8:15.
I have been attacked by demons more than once. The attacks that I have gone through are serious and major. Sue had witnessed one of my attacks. She came running from her room with her gun in hand to see what could be happening, what I was going through. I did not know that Bernardo had passed. As I slept on the 23rd, I was immersed and overpowered with terror, with fear. I have never in my life known that kind of fear. The fear lasted through the night. The only way I could help my fear, was to ask for help from the invisible, from the deceased people I know, from God as I envision God. And I had to pray as though my life depended on it. My back was to the wall. I have never felt such terror in my life. That was Saturday. Sunday, for some reason, I have a very uncomfortable day, and again, Sunday night, dreams of fear and terror. My ideas of fear stayed with me for at least a week. And then I knew that Bernardo had passed, of course, and the terror that a soul feels when he is between worlds, dead to one world, not accepting the fact of death, unable to get to the next world. It's a very real state. Mind you, the things I say are not proven facts. They are faiths. They are beliefs. My mother was a medium. I had been with Spiritism since I was 3 years old. There has been tremendous amount of prayer on my part, on Chon, on the people here, to help this being transferred. Brings another important idea that I consider important. There is a difference between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Very, very often, in my experience, the dead can guide us, can give us presentations, can help us, can do things that we cannot do. Some enlightened people who are dead or have more enlightenment can understand and give us good advice and good directions. This I've always known. I ask myself again and again, what can we, the living, do for those who have passed on? It occurred to me that the help that the dead need is to be reminded that we cared for them, reminded of their position, reminded that they are also on a path and there are things that they must do to evolve in the world of the spirit. Ultimately, the spirit finds freedom if they work for it, just like we do, if they want it, and if they are responsible to it. There are at least a dozen people, at least, that I mention in my inner work on a daily basis. One of the first entities that I speak to is Pamela's mother. I know that Pamela's mother loved me. She always said so. She was, in my opinion, one of the dearest people. I never heard her say an angry word, or maybe an angry word a little bit when Pamela carried on. Who could help that? But she always spoke kindly of everything and everyone. And she gave an aura of being settled, of being kind, of loving. And I know she loved me. On a nightly basis, on a daily basis, I speak to her, and I probably always will. I speak to my mother and father I speak to them of my mission to come to earth, and they are entities that need evolution. They will give me their knowledge, and in some way I will share what knowledge I have with them. For me, there is no difference between the world of the living and the world of the dead. How many times have I sat down in my office before I speak to somebody, and I honestly say in a loud voice, Mr. Gurdjieff, help me. What am I going to do? Who else am I going to ask for help? Mr. Gurdjieff, please help me. And I've never been stuck or scared or lost or anything but knowing that I'm not speaking. The entities are speaking through me. I have nothing to say. Left to my own devices, I'd be in the pool room all day. That's been my life. Every book of value that I have read on self-work again and again and again reminds us that man as he is, and this is from Maurice Nicole, man as he is the sensual man composed of what he can see, what he can hear, the five senses. On the other hand is the psychological man who thinks in terms of spirit, in terms of before, the hereafter, all those spiritual things, and that this man and this man must blend and become one. As they are in very few people, they must become one and proceed to develop in a harmony of spirit and mind. That, I believe, is the work set out before us, and that is the work we experience, and that's the work we do. And we call it, in fourth way terms, the work or the great work. Tonight I said we would also speak about something very interesting. As if this hadn't been. Throughout my years of speaking with people, which now is getting to be over 30 years, and my training as a psychoanalyst, it is easy these days, not like it was in the 1800s, it is easy this day. Without too much doubt or fear, people will tell you they're gay. They would like to be gay. They've looked at their sister with burning eyes. A million sexual things that would never be discussed 100 years ago. Now we're the same old stuff. You're gay? Yes, so's everybody else. So what? You turn on Rachel Maddow and you feel better. And then I said, but I don't know the salary of one person that I work with. Not one. The greatest secret in the entire world is the size of your paycheck. Gee, that's pretty weird. Because when I was coming up, everybody was out of work, the Great Depression and the years afterwards. Hey, did you lose your job? Yeah, I lost it. Well, I was only making $8 a week, but I got another one. I'm going to make $9. $9. Boy, that's money, what you earned, where you worked. This was common conversation. There was little else you spoke of but your salary. Boy, did I have a good day yesterday. I worked overtime. The guy gave me an extra $1.50, so I came home with $8 for the day. $8 for the day. Fantastic. Nowadays, nobody will tell you their salary. So I heard that some people here got together on a Wednesday night or a Thursday or another, something like that, and they revealed They exposed themselves. They tore open their garb and talked about how much money they earned. I haven't heard it yet. I haven't heard it yet. But, yeah. I could not believe that these people who have been talking and meeting for so many years finally came out of the money closet. So, it brought to mind there's a wonderful, wonderful book called Money and the Meaning of Life. It's an old book. It's a very important book for fourth way work, for anybody who wishes to wise up some. I assign this book as reading the people here. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful book in that it goes at great detail and beautifully written about the relationship between people and money. And it explains that once money was something that was close to being spiritual. It was a relationship that people had between themselves and gold. And now he describes in part that what he is seeing is people falling madly in love and possessed with money, and that in the Old Testament there is that thou should have no other idols before me, yet money has become a great, great idol. People will not tell you about money. They'll tell you about sex, but not about money. So I would like to ask people here who've been reading what they read so far about it and what they think.
I think that it's a great book, and I've really enjoyed bits and pieces of it more so than others. But a couple of things that come to mind. It talks about somewhere in the earlier third of the book how coin currency for many years had a religious idol on one side and a political idol or a sort of contemporary reference on the other. And that was done to remind us that money was a mechanism to get through your day, to get the piece of bread so that you could go home and not starve that night. But it was in the service of just getting that out of the way, getting that sort of that commerce that you need in a contemporary society in order to function and live. But the other side of the coin, quite literally in this case, was that you should always be mindful of that is all it is, and that there is a higher power, that there is a higher purpose to our existence, and that this is just a mechanism to kind of continue on with your day. And if you look at most of our currency now, there's not very much religious iconography on either side. We've sort of forgotten that entirely. We've really gone the full spectrum towards money as the idol, money as the religious iconography itself. So that's one thing that I found very, very interesting. I spent some time thinking about what does that say about us as people? What does that say about us as countrymen of these different countries who design currency in that way? Because it's a choice. People design a bill to look that way. Where did that thought go? The other section that I often remember and think about is this idea of gifts. And that a gift ceases to be a gift when it stops its transit from one person to another. So if I receive something from someone and I put it in the bank, someone gave me money and I put it in the bank and I say I'm saving that for my grandchildren, or I'm saving that for when I'm old and I'll need it again, that gift is no longer a gift. It's something that has stopped in its transit. And to make something a gift, you have to take it, you have to receive it, and then you have to return it or move it along the line to someone else. And you look at, as the popular saying goes, the rich get richer, because they're making money, but they're not putting it back into the system. They're not putting it in places where it can fuel other activity. And so these gifts that you earn, you can earn a gift for yourself by working hard, by being paid a good bonus at work or what have you. If that doesn't go back into our ecosystem, then we are doing a disservice to the work you put into receiving it in the first place. Those are two thoughts I have on the book.
Do you recall a part where he mentions that when we work for someone, we do something for someone, we give them something that they can point to? Gee, he did this, or he fixed that, or he built this for me. And when the payment is a check, the piece of paper that goes to another bank with another piece of paper, there is nothing tangible that you can say, because of Joe, that is here, or this is there. There's a living person attached to the piece of work, rather than... Now, Albert says something beautiful, but then you gotta have it to know it.
I don't remember.
See how quickly they forget. Albert mentioned that the only way to understand money is to have money.
Yes.
Tell us about that idea.
I mean, first of all, if you want to experience swimming in the ocean, you're gonna have to go in the ocean. This is the kind of point of view that I'm bringing in. A lot of people talk about money, but they don't do anything. They're very afraid. Fear is a very, very big part of people when it comes to not believing in themselves. They're stuck. I came from a poor family, and they stayed as an attitude. And when you work on yourself, I think you become free. The idea is to be free. Money for me is freedom. The more money I have, the more freedom I have. The more money I have, I don't need anyone anymore. I don't need to report to anyone. I don't give a damn about anyone. I can help anyone I want. So the money for me is energy. I'm not in love with money. I don't possess time. I don't care. But it's a very nice thing to have around.
Can you make a link between money and spirituality? Or God, so to speak?
Yes. When I met you, I had a little cafe who gave me enough money for my lifestyle at the moment. I worked half an hour to an hour a day, 3 times a week maybe, 4 times a week. And the rest of the stuff, I hung out with him and we read books.
We all make mistakes. You go.
We read books, we had 5 meetings a day. I mean, if I did not have money, I couldn't have done this. It's very simple. I can buy any book I want, whenever I want, and I can make the time to read it. And not read after I come back from work. And you have children, you have a nanny. Nanny gives you the ability to go to the cafe and read a book. So money is no good, no bad. You know, just money. Like water, like bread, money.
You've heard the idea of people loving money. What was that?
Yes.
What does that make you
greed.
think?
When you fall into greed, then money becomes not the mean of life, it becomes the target. And then you collect the money and you know exactly how much money you have, and you make, you count the money. I'm going to buy coffee, I'm not going to buy coffee. You have money, man. What do you have to worry about? So, look, I come from no money, and it's difficult. If you would know how difficult it is to be poor, it's a state of mind that is, and for my father, I was a kid, for my father it probably was the most horrible thing that you can struggling bringing food to your children every day. It's amazing. I find it to be one of the hardest things that a man can go through in life, especially if it doesn't end. And it goes for many years. Maybe you have up and downs, you know. So I've learned that if you don't have money, it's going to be very, very dangerous. But I also learned that if I'm going to go according to this theory, I'm going to be a miserable guy. So in a way, I'm not afraid that I would lose my money. I think that I'm so good with it that no matter what, you put me in an island with no people, you come after 10 years, you're going to find a hotel and a casino. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I work it out. And
I believe you.
And this belief inside of me, you know, it's like it's a way to, if the fear comes in and it's the minus, it's the plus that makes it a non-issue. The plus minus, you know, to neutralize it. And I think to be like, you know, and you know, just be cool. Don't let it, you know.
Did you read anything in the book that caught your eye?
No, I started it a week ago, so I'm on page number 29 or 30, so I'm just in the beginning.
It gets better.
Yeah?
Peter, have you read it?
I have.
Tell me what you think.
Almost immediately, this man was struck by something he finds indicative of the nature of work, and that Needleman's giving a presentation to a number of people, and through some process that happens, coincidence or otherwise, someone becomes attracted to him and his philosophy, even through opposition at first. Someone who says, I want my money back. Very quickly, Needleman begins to work with them, and Peter says he finds that indicative of work. He means to say that the process, for instance, by which he arrived at New York City and within 1 month of existing here is sitting at a table doing a gazing exercise with Mark Axe, and soon enough exploring the philosophy of the work found to be tremendously inspiring in a way. As far as Needleman's philosophy and what he's putting forth, certainly most of it rang true to Peter. Fill in the blank with almost any object we can become obsessed with. Sex, food, power, money is tied to something that's a practical necessity for most of us. You want to take your dreams and put them into reality and become something, or do whatever it is one wishes to do. Money seems to be essential. So Peter believes he's spot on with speaking of the obsession and the worship of money. And
Thank you. Has anyone else read it?
I was most impressed, I think, with the general sort of perspective of what he calls the path in life, being one where you don't avoid the normal things of everyday life. In fact, you in some way engage in them more strongly in order that it creates, in a sense, this tension between ordinary life and your spiritual life, and that it's by the working of those two together that you're able to really elevate yourself. That he talks about the monastic life, where people secluded themselves from ordinary life, and where this tension did not exist, and that and then he talks about the other side of people that completely get involved in the worldly life and engage with eating, sex, enjoyment of pleasures, physical and so on, and where there's not any sense of a higher ideal, and that it's really where the two of these come together that something else begins to take place, where one can be consciously aware of one's physicality and all that aspect of life, and not become a slave to it.
Not become a slave to it. Someone else had read it? You, Travis, yeah.
I took away some very similar things from the book, but one of the things that really I internalized was money in its truest form, can be a gift. A gift that serves on two levels. That it has a higher and a lower form. In the lower form, obviously, meeting your base needs, giving you food, and the things that you need to survive in this world. Its highest form, this, right? To be able to facilitate the work, and the introspection and really look into it. And I found a lot of beauty in that, and really that there's two levels to money, and meet two different needs of yourself.
Would you say, have you given some thought to the idea or somehow that one person can acquire a lot of money? Does that person fall into the pitfall or temptation of feeling that because of that he is a superior human being?
Yeah, of course. Of course, there's that. At any level of money, you can fall into that story. But I think
any level. That's interesting, right there.
For example, it's all who you're here. Obviously, in New York, you're surrounded by people who can be very wealthy or very poor. In a town in Mexico, you can feel very wealthy with very little money. But I think really getting back to the fact of however much money you have, and obviously you need to be able to meet a base need, of that level. Above that sort of level of subsistence, and supporting yourself and your family, how you use that higher level of money, it's really it's up to you, and it can be a little bit of money or it can be a lot of money, and I think that's the beauty of it.
What do you think of the idea that because I have 5 times the amount of money you have, I must be a better man?
Well, I work for billionaires, so I know very closely that everybody has some everybody's got the same issues no matter how much money you have. So I certainly don't buy that. But I do think that to make a lot of money, there's a certain level of intelligence and work ethic that tends to be the case, not always. But I think it comes back to what your values are, and look, I like to it's important to me to support my family in a certain way, and and I tend to make a decent income throughout my career. But what's important to me is not necessarily spending that money on an enormous house or a fancy car or something like that. The important to me is to spend my money on work like this, and that's just how I feel like I should live my life.
Thank you.
I think that the very nice idea that you brought up is you take the external world and the inner world and you make them one. When you do business, you gotta be good. You cannot say, okay guys, hi, I'm gonna come here and do business. What are you gonna do? You don't have an idea, you have to think. You have to be focused. You gotta wake up in the morning. You gotta put 12 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours. You gotta be smart. You gotta have the ability to observe yourself, apply ideas that you have to be. So business is a very, very good way to polish your working idea of who you are. And in business, it's very simple. There is reward. If you didn't do well, you go under. And if you do well, you go above. And if you do very, very well, you are faced with a challenge. Because now it's a question of your morals and your core values and this, and now you have to do it. So life brings you into this point, it's like, more money for me, or I gotta be fair. So, and then if you pass this level and you're fair, you start treating your employees different. You start to call them team members. You start to say, I'm not a company, I am a member of a team. And you change with the business helps you. The business reflects your consciousness level. And it can be an organization. I'm not talking about a little store. It can really develop into an organization that you can benefit many, many people around. And other people say, wow, this model is great. So when you actually do it, when you open a business, you can choose the model according to your inner understanding and develop it accordingly. So it's very interesting. I think that business is, it's not for nothing. Every religion says, if you are not a good householder, go to the beach and meditate, hold hands with your friend, play the guitar a little bit and nice. But you have to be a good householder. And the meaning for that, it's exactly that, I think. Because the real challenge comes when you gotta, do what you have to do as a business.
What do you think of the idea that, for instance, if you like me very much, you love me, you write me a check for $5 million, and I'm in a good position?
You have to ask me for help.
Yeah, I ask you for help, you give me help.
Yeah, I'll consider it.
I'm trying to get so I can lift 100 pounds. Can you give me a gift of getting the strength to do so?
Money is not a replacement for anything. And it doesn't have to be money or no money. You can be poor and happy, but you can say, listen, I'm not interested. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested in business. Leave me alone. Yeah. Give me a 9-to-5 job. I'm not interested. It's not my style. Not in this lifetime. Fine. Yeah. This is fine. But if you want to go, then do it right. Yeah. So it's not...
Well, thank you. I think that people should continue the idea, because Needleman was a very, very experienced teacher, a very, very terrific man, and he writes Money and the Meaning of Life, that there's a deep connection between money, the way we treat money, the way we think of money, and the meaning of life. What that is.
I have one more minor quick thought. And it relates to something we talked about yesterday, and something that both Travis and Albert have brought up. That if you look at money as a metaphor and not as an actual thing, right? Yes, you could have a lot of money, and that money may allow you better, opportunities to make moral decisions that you might not otherwise be able to make, or purchases that you might not be able to make, or what have you. But if you look at it as a metaphor for capacity, and maybe you don't have money, but you have the capacity for more love than the next person, or more teaching ability, or more knowledge, or what have you. Gil said something very interesting to me yesterday. You look at this as a metaphor with money, and there's a tax, right? The more you make, the more you have to pay, the more you pay back. But if your capacity is for knowledge or for compassion, and you have more than the next person, you should also view that as an obligation to put more of that back into the system. So I think if you look at money and the meaning of life in that respect, money plays a very nice metaphoric role to whatever you have an abundance of and a capacity to use, commercially speaking. I say that in quote fingers, I just mean among other people. You have an obligation to put a substantial percentage of that back into the system.
In hearing the comments that people have been making, it seems to me that even though these words haven't been used exactly, but that a lot of people feel that money is a form of energy. And of course we can think of anything as a form of energy, whether it's invisible or visible. If money is a form of energy, one has a choice to be interested in that type of energy, or conversely to not be interested in that type of energy. I'm thinking of certain homeless people, and we've all heard the legends and maybe know some people in our daily rounds who have nothing. And they choose to have nothing because they didn't want to deal with the energy of money in that way. And they deal with other types of energy, and they have become free from having no money. I think that the point that Travis was making, that he knows a lot of billionaires personally, and that they have issues just the same as anybody else, makes it quite clear that a very essential component of the human condition is the idea of tension and release, and that nothing can be created unless there is a tension and then a release, and it's almost as if a new energy is squeezed out of the tension and release. If there's no tension and release, no new energy can be created, or let's say, not to violate the second law of thermodynamics, let's say that no energy can be transformed. So if we regard things as forms of, all things as forms of energy that can be manipulated or experienced according to the idea of tension and release, which is very important also in art. You know, if art, if music, if painting, if literature has no tension and then release in it, it's boring. Comedy, big basis of comedy is tension and release, you know, building up, and then the punchline gives us the release. So this idea of tension and release, it's something I've been working with a lot recently, so this is in my mind. And I think that the concept of money fits very, very well into this idea of tension and release, that even billionaires have issues, meaning that it's simply a form of energy that can be done with whatever one desires to do with it, and one can experience it according to that principle.
I recall, Gil, years ago, we talked about money, and you mentioned that money was sacred because our life was sacred. And I always remember that. Somehow I get up in the morning and I do a service and I receive something in payment. For me, that was sacred. And that struck me. At this point in time, I sense that I'm living in a borrowed time, with borrowed amount of things. And somehow using this life, I have to return everything. And when Michael mentioned about the currency, the coin had religious meaning, I study dollar bills, and there is a Jewish star, and there is that Mason sign, and it also
And the eye.
says, God we trust, and penny also. It says God we trust. So I think the founding fathers, the money was a sacred thing. And I like to think that money is sacred, not just for me to obtain, but do something with that. So in a way, it's energy. It's higher self energy.
It was occurring to me that things like money or buildings or businesses can be willed, can be given. The son can inherit something from the father. And then I'm forced to think, I like to lift weights, so I say. And nobody in the world can give me the strength to lift what I can't lift. Maybe God, but nobody can give that to me as a gift. To play the saxophone and to have it sound beautiful, and I can't get that given to me. I can't steal that. Nobody no matter how much they love me, they can't give it to me. Is Needleman getting us to think in terms that there is a wealth, maybe, things that we can only get from the Spirit, that we can only get from God? Is there something in this world that cannot be given, that cannot be stolen? Anyway, I think we'll read this and we'll get some more impressions of how Dr. Needleman ties the idea that there's a sacredness to money, that there's a passion. Money can arouse a passion. Money can arouse our insanity. Money can also appeal to the worst part of ourselves. We'll marry somebody because when we marry them, we'll get their money and then life will be better, etc. Hugo, I wish to thank you so much for being here. Good for you to come. Have the years been kind to you?
Yes.
Would you like to say anything to the community while you're here?
Sure.
Please do.
Consciousness is an amazing phenomenon. When we start saying, like you suggest, to sense ourselves, when we start to sense that we have something within ourselves that is always with us. When I walk in the street, it talks, it moves, I reflect, I image, I feeling. And in the beginning it's an abstraction, it's bothering me, I'm not really aware how it happened. So here usually with this kindness and patience, usually say, sense yourself and sense yourself. In the beginning it's not so very powerful, but at a certain point we start to see that there's a whole universe within ourselves. And this universe is built of abstraction that are able to be seen once our inner eyes is open. And then the real work, at least from my understanding, it's only from my opinion, is that if we have aims, or if we want to do something in the world, we need to learn how to align our thoughts and feelings and inner conversation especially to our aims. But what I learned very much is like, especially at the beginning, like I have an idea, I want to do this. Okay, and now in my conversation inside myself, I contradict totally what I want to do. And I realize that this is really diminishing force. This is the power of gravity, it's not some kind of thing. It's like, I can't do it, someone work for me, whatever, so. But I can never really find what's the source of this inner speech that was hindering me all the time. So once you learn how to find these things and learn how to almost reprogram the conversation within ourselves, then you can enter into a dimension that is endlessness. There's no death, there's no sickness, there's images like ourselves that are appear like flowers, and then one day they're not there anymore. But in the process they bloom, they give some food for some birds or for some other animals, they maybe even smell good, and they have actually a function. They do have a function. So we all have functions, and the alignment of ourselves to the function gives meaning to our life. And I think that at least for all of us here, I mean, learn search for meaning. We want meaning, and we do have to be a good householder to get those meaning, because if the operation doesn't work, if we cannot deal with the physical power and do not know how to manage it, it's going to be kind of a little bit difficult to manage spiritual power, which is much more elusive. So we'd like to all.
Thank you, Hugo. Thank you. Would you like, anybody want to make a statement? Thank you and something. At least say hello and tell us your name and all this jazz.
Oh, hello, I'm Andrea,
Hello, Andrea.
and I've been introduced to the work by Peter. I've seen his process, and that's what really interested me. how his discipline and his change of lifestyle was the big inspiration for me to be interested in the work. I'd never heard of it before until I met Peter. And then I tried reading one of Ouspensky's books, and I wasn't interested in it. And then what you said today, like the force, sometimes it calls you, sometimes it doesn't. I do believe in that. I do believe that certain things come to your life when you're ready. And it's been like a year where I've been entering the fourth way to work very slowly and just learning and trying to apply it to my life. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here, and know that this is an oasis. The people here can help. I can try. Believe that there are no accidents, and you are here through some sort of force that has brought you here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing her. So,
I'd just like to add something to the earlier discussion on death. And I have just found in this work a great deal can be done in that area. And I feel, when Gil was speaking earlier, just the sense of the depth of that realm, of that place between life and death. And just how powerful that is. And I found for myself that another level of myself was accessed at some point in relationship to death. Death was the core idea. And one thing I did was that when my father had cancer, and I worked with him for 2 years until he left this earth, that I made a gesture, that as a gesture to my dad, I went to work at a crisis center for people with life-threatening illnesses and their families. And I did that for 3 years as a volunteer. And I think that one has to extend oneself past the ones you love the most, that you're used to loving your family or your children, but how you take that same energy and extend it to the world around you. And I feel that the work is very connected to creativity. A sense of artistry in relationship to ideas, and especially with death. And so I've had really hundreds of experiences in that realm because I wanted to go there in a way that was not negative but beautiful. And I just recommend to everyone to expand their world in relationship to that sensation. And just reviewing how grateful I feel for all those people I met. People I was the crisis counselor. So if you were just diagnosed with AIDS, you would see me. And that a stranger would trust you to tell them about their very existence. And I use what I learned in this work to just respond. And I remember this one woman who had been diagnosed with cancer, and her whole life for the last year or so was chemotherapy. And I saw in her, and I think it's something Gil has always done, to dare to be real with people. And I saw her in France in the 1800s, and she was in the theater. And she had on this beautiful feathered hat. So I just started to tell her what I saw about her. And we both went into this reverie together from that realm. And a few years later, I saw her walking down the street. She was still alive. She was well. I don't know how long she lasted, but this whole beautiful world came about so that the subject was discussed, and I want to thank Gil for staying in touch with my mother. So this is a beautiful place, and I was lucky to find this really wonderful center where I work, and many other things happened as well. And it happened because of learning to speak from essence that I was given that gift here. So I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Pam. That was quite beautiful. Thinking about Bernardo and the talk tonight, it's a reminder when I got the email from Derek, how the work provides shocks to us, and that something can really come out of the blue. I didn't know Bernardo that well. I really was not expecting an email like that. It really changed my thinking. And it's a gentle reminder, in a way, there's a gift that comes from this, that anything can happen at any second, and that a phone call, an email can change your life forever, and that if you have the chance to express yourself, to tell someone something, to act a certain way, to grab that chance and not wait for the next time for it to happen, because you never know if that next time is ever going to happen. And for someone who's experienced that, it can be used as a push, as a gentle nudge to act on something in the moment and not wait for the next time.
I mentioned to Pam that I'm lighting a candle and pouring incense and water till August the 16th. There will be 49 days from his transitioning. So, just want to mention that.
I think it's worth noting that so many of us think nothing of going to some form of job or something and devoting 8, 9, 10 hours a day there. And yet how many of us would think in terms of devoting 8, 9, or 10 hours a day to prayer, to the thought of death, to interior things. Because Sue, the more I listen to Sue's recordings, the more I see that she is an incredible jazz saxophonist. Incredible. And in moments of desire, I say to myself, how could I steal that or borrow it or have it given to me? Why can't I do it? And the only place that I can turn to receive that is the interior world, the world of faith, the world of courage, the world of daring. Anyway, I wish to thank everyone for being here. Thank you so much for coming. It's good to see you. And it takes courage to be happy. It takes courage to be content. It takes courage to remember that when we look and we see a million things wrong with everything. And the Sufi teachings tell us, somewhere in the ground, among all the stones, among all the rubble and gravel, there exists a pearl in open sight that anyone can see, that anyone can take. But to find that pearl is a gift that one is able to bring to ourselves. So perhaps we're saying in many ways, how much time are we willing to spend looking for that pearl? And what are the various names that we can call that pearl? Anyway, thank you very much for attending, and till the next time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.